Aaron Klein, welcome to the Author's Spotlight. This is Aaron Klein. I love your headline, a nationwide personal mortgage consultant. I love that thought, nationwide. And today we're going to talk about your experience and the insights that I've had looking at your book. When I started looking at your book, what I saw is the power of starting small and seeing the puzzle, seeing the whole piece. And you didn't just start out chasing mortgages as a career. You began chasing what I say is stability, just enough to keep your rent paid, but you saw something that others seemed to miss, and you treated everything as significant, like a big puzzle, and each piece really mattered. And over time, you assembled really an amazing career, and even more than a career, like a real significant calling. And that's what I really admire most about you. And you have honored the ordinary until it became extraordinary. So, my first question to you today, and as we speak to your audience, people who know you, people who are just meeting you for the first time, when you look back at all the puzzle pieces that didn't seem to fit the first time, like when you're trying to fit them in there, the jobs, the moments, the failures. What's one piece that surprised you by becoming central to the theme in your story?
It's interesting. A great question. When I look back now, I feel like everything happens for a reason, but that's not where you think you are when those things are happening, right? And I think it's really interesting how we as a society expect people to know what they want to do for a living by the time they graduate. And I had no idea. I was fiercely independent and I was bound and determined I was going to make it on my own. And that, like you said, also meant that I was struggling. And it taught me so many things. It taught me the value of money. But I also benefited from having a mentor that didn't just teach me the ropes of the mortgage business, but also showed me how much of a difference we can make in other people's lives. And not just in time, in money, in wisdom, always giving to other people. And my parents taught me that same thing. And so
Hmm.
I do my best to pay that forward, to carry on that legacy by helping support others to the best of my ability in every
Hmm.
single area.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that role of pay it forward. What you've learned now, you pass on to others. Yeah. I'm curious, most people when they're doing a loan, they just submit the paperwork. But we were talking about in chapter 3 of your book that you actually, or chapter 4 of your book, you actually write narratives. And you see underwriting not as an obstacle, but almost as an audience. And one that has to be persuaded. It's an individual person who's looking at the paperwork and you're talking to them and you speak to them as a human being, not a person behind an algorithm. And that's really rare. More now today than ever before because AI is doing so much calculating, and we need to bring the humanity back into that. And what's the most unexpected loan story you've ever told that actually changed the underwriter's decision? And what did it teach you about the power of crafting a narrative?
You're so right that crafting a
Good.
narrative is more important now than ever because of AI. And I think a lot of people think with getting a mortgage is just a matter of numbers, and that really isn't true because it's how the numbers are interpreted. And I learned early on that if you don't paint the picture that you want the underwriter to see, they're going to come to their own conclusions. And once they've made their decision, it's very hard to change their mind. And so
Yeah.
I have a lot of stories, but what comes to mind first for me is the complicated ones. I've worked with a lot of developers, and underwriters love consistency. They like to see the same source of income at a consistent amount year after year after year. But what developers do is they buy land and they improve the property and they fill it with tenants, and then they sell it and they're on to the next project. And so their income's a mix of rental real estate and partnerships and corporations and capital gains. And it fluctuates from year to year depending on which phase of development they happen to be in. And
Hmm.
so one of the things that I've been able to do, you have to remember an underwriter is a human being. And they aren't an expert in all things, but they are expected to make loan decisions on everything. And so by
Mm,
crafting a narrative to explain to them the life cycle of income for a developer and how actually this is stable when you look at it over a longer period of time has really allowed me to serve those clients very well and help them get loans that they otherwise wouldn't be able to get or would have to pay a lot more money for.
yeah. I love that because that human side of it, knowing that you're talking to a human being and helping them understand that the person getting the loan is a human being. And it's not two algorithms talking to each other. And that is a time consuming. It takes more um, compassion, understanding, presence. True.
Yeah, absolutely it does. I mean, you have to do a lot of behind the scenes work to first make sure you have a good command of the details and then that you're able to teach it essentially to somebody else, an underwriter.
Well said. Well said. I love that thought. In your throughout the book, and in my personal experience with you, I know you as an athlete, an endurance athlete, long runs, marathons, triathlons, and it's just how you live. You live with endurance. That's your like your mantra. You swim on your back when you have to. You run marathons with stress fractures. That's a beautiful story. And you don't glorify it. Um, you glorify the completion. You don't glorify the ease of it, but you show that success isn't for the fastest person. It's for the one who doesn't quit. And when you're most tempted to give up, and I think of that. What's that wall that people hit in the marathon at mile number
20.
yeah, no, mile 20, Yeah. And it's like, and you got four more, five more, six more to go, and you're tempted to give up, whether it's in a marathon or on a loan file. What keeps you going? What is something outside of you, like your external motivation? And then what's your internal motivation to keep going?
I would say that it's for me, it's probably a combination of things. So first, I was raised to believe you don't give up. My parents always taught me to do my best and to do what I say I'm going to do. So that's first and foremost. But second, I'm intrinsically just a very driven person, and I love to learn both from life and from others and from books. And I'm really inspired by people who accomplish great things. And every time I read their stories, the common theme is dedication and integrity. And dedication to your commitment and integrity to do the right thing, even when nobody's looking. So you think about you're in a race and yeah, there's spectators, but if you choose to quit, that's with you. There's so many people running the race, nobody's even going to notice you. And when
Hmm,
I encounter a challenge or a roadblock, my mantra is relentless forward progress. So
hmm,
even if it's just one step at a time, I will finish a race. Like you said, with a stress fracture, it wasn't comfortable, but I knew I was going to get there eventually. I could have dropped out. I chose not to. If it's a loan file, I just keep turning the Rubik's Cube around until I figure
hmm.
out a solution, a different angle to look at something that gives me a path to be able to make it work. For me, quitting just simply is not an option I ever even consider.
Yeah. You started out by saying it was the way I was raised. I didn't quit. I learned that. And in chapter one and chapter two, it's your backstory about your mom in chapter one, your backstory about your dad in chapter two. Just speak to that a little bit about the gift that they gave you, mom, around not quitting, dad, not quitting. Where does that come from?
Yeah, my parents didn't have it easy growing up. My dad lived in a household that was dependent on government assistance, and when he was a teenager, he had to go to work to help to support his family. And that's the example I saw my dad for any faults he ever had. He was a very hard worker, and he
Mm,
always wanted to serve others and wanted to figure out a way to help other people. Um,
yeah.
and I bring that into my work in mortgage banking. I also like to encourage other people athletically because I feel like anything I can do to help somebody else live their best life, it makes me feel good.
Mm.
And my mom, the same thing. She also didn't have an easy life growing up. My brother and I lived with my mom. She was a single mom. She was constantly working hard, and I learned from her perseverance, and keeping a positive attitude, even in cases where you might not feel like having one, where you're feeling a little discouraged, and to just look for the positive and to keep moving forward.
Yeah. What I love, that reference of your mom and your dad in chapter one, chapter two, because the loan is a commodity. It's money. You can get it anywhere, but it's the experience and what you teach people along the way while they're receiving that gift from you, and that only comes from your background story. And it's like, when you're getting a loan, if you're a person right now listening to this and you're looking at different loan officers, ask ask the loan officer that you're talking to, or the lender that you're talking to, tell me your backstory about your mom and your dad. And most people don't have that context of how it impacts their relationship with people today, and you do. And I know one of the big things that has been impacted in your life is preparation. You know, and it's sacred to you. You don't rush to submit a loan, and others do, how fast I can get it closed. And you use preparation like training day. You're ready to really put your full heart into it, so you're fully prepared and fully committed to that. So how do you help your clients who resist preparation, who seem to just come, um, like not showing up on time, not getting the documents to you on time, not delivering what's necessary? How do you help clients who resist that?
You know, I laugh because I think after 35 years, I'm still working on that. We live in this world now of press button, get thing, right? I mean, just myself last night, I ordered 3 things from Amazon. They were at my doorstep at 5 o'clock in the morning. And so it's understandable that people make the assumption that applying for a mortgage should be as simple as opening a credit card online, or ordering something from
Mm,
Amazon and having it be on your doorstep the next day. And the truth is that isn't that way in mortgage financing. Mortgages are an onerous process, and the advent of AI isn't making it easier. It's actually making it easier to commit fraud, which means it's getting more difficult in the mortgage business. And so preparation is key. The good thing is that there's still human beings involved in mortgage financing, and automated underwriting can't understand all of the nuances. Um, as we often say, when your values are clear, your decisions are easy. And buying a home is an emotional and often stressful process. There's so much that goes into it. And getting financing set up front before you ever go and look at a house gives you the time and the space to make a plan and understand all the consequences of the different financing options and make a good choice, so that when you do find the house you want to buy, and maybe you're in a situation where there's multiple offers on that house and you have to make some pretty quick decisions. If we wait until that point to start the application, people are making decisions under duress, and they're not making good decisions. They're just making the
mm,
fastest, easiest decision to get them to where they want to be. When we can do that
mm.
preparation up front, then they can have a clear set of values that they can apply to the decision-making process, and it gives them a much, much better outcome. So I do my best to convey that. It doesn't always work. Some people will still do things at the last minute. But I do
Yeah.
my best to explain the benefits of taking the time to do that planning up front, because it really does pay off in the long run.
Yeah, I heard it said that the way that you spell love is Prepare. Prepare. It's a loving act to help people prepare. And sometimes people don't have that relationship with themselves to recognize how respectful it is for them to do the deep preparation before they actually go out and look for a home. And it's such a great training and teaching that you do. Another thing in chapter number three, it's your story, your arc of how you got into the business. And you didn't just climb the ladder, you really transformed through each rung on the ladder as you climbed up. And you went from a receptionist, I think that's right, from a
Yeah.
receptionist to a broker to an educator. and you relate to your clients not like from a distance, but from within their own transition. If it's their first home, or if it's their first investment, or for some people, it's a second chance. They lost the first round, maybe even bankrupt, or just had a difficult, first portion of life financially, and they're trying to get going again. So what do you say to someone who's at the edge of life, and and they're at a place where the decisions that they're making right now, they have to really trust themselves to take a leap, to bet on themselves, particularly like you can do this. What do you say to those people who've had that setback in the past?
Well, interesting. Well, I would say I'm dealing with a client with this right now, and I will say that as somebody who's concerned about the human being, my first focus is on what's right for that person, not making a sale or having them jump into a transaction when they're not ready. And I think that the first thing I always tell people is the acronym HALT. I think don't make big life decisions when you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. And once we get that out of the way, we want to
Yeah.
focus on what we want rather than what we don't want. And generally, if someone's not trusting themselves to make a decision, that can be based in fear. And so we have to consider what they're fearing. And is that a real threat, or is it just fear? Or is it fear from something they haven't unpacked from a long time ago, or a bad experience they previously had? And if the decision aligns with what they want, it's okay to feel the fear and do it anyway.
Well said. Yeah, money seems to be so rooted in a lot of story. Um, Usually from their background, how their parents related to money and how they grew up around money, and what the edge of the conversation was around money. And what I know about you is that you're not just teaching people about money to prove what you know. You're doing it because you know what it's like not to know. It's like you know grief if you've experienced grief. You know money if you know what it's like not to have money. And you never forgot that. And you've built literacy, a financial literacy. And talk about that. If you could design a financial education system for young women who are just starting out, what's the first thing you teach them?
I love that question. Because I do feel like it's my life's mission to not just help
Yeah.
other people, but help people become not become financially stable, to improve their lives, to increase their wealth. And because housing is the basis of that, is the basis of generational wealth. And I wish our public schools taught more financial education, because it is the one thing everybody needs to know to go through life. Not everybody has to go to college. Not everybody has to take the same path in their career, but they do have to be able to balance their budget and buy their groceries and maintain financial stability. So if I had to pick something to teach first, I would teach budgeting and investing. Um, because you have to learn to live within your means and start saving and investing early, and getting that right from an early age will build a strong financial base for the rest of your life. I think back when I was younger, if I would have learned that, I'd be light years ahead of where I am today financially, because
Wow.
if you get it wrong, it can create years of strife. And some people will never get ahead if they get it wrong at the beginning. They will have, a bankruptcy, or they will have years of financial struggle paying back bad decisions they made when they were younger. I have met
Mm,
specifically women, so many women who've relied on a partner or a parent to handle their finances and had no idea how to manage that part of their life if there was a death or a divorce or separation. And so I would like people to feel educated and empowered to handle their own finances with confidence.
mm. It's much more than being a loan officer or a person who got you the loan. I see, like, as you talk about a young woman who's going to maybe have a family someday, that you're talking about a generational key, and a way for someone to become much more than who they were told they could be. Like there's these already rules that are in place that this is what you can do, this is how far you can go. There is a ceiling on that, but you help remove that. You help build a bridge, a financial, emotional, and even a spiritual bridge. And knowing you for all these years, I know that you stay connected to people long after the transaction closes. So I'm curious, like, if you have one message to the clients who you've helped in the past, what would you want them to tell their children about the experience of working with you?
I'm laughing because just before this interview, I was meeting with a client's child. And I've been doing this long enough now that I've helped many of my clients' children and am starting to help some of their children's children. And I don't even feel like I'm old enough to say that. Um, and while I'm so grateful every time somebody recommends me to their friend or their coworker or their neighbor, because my business is 100% referral based, I'm especially honored when they recommend me to their children or the children recommend me to their parents, because there's simply nobody on the planet you care about and want to protect more than your children or your parents. So I consider it the highest compliment I can receive when somebody refers me to their child or to their parent. Um, and what I want them to say is, I'm grateful to say are the things they tell me that they've been told about me, that I cared about what was best for them, not just making a sale, that they consider me family, that they wouldn't consider going anywhere else for their finances, and that I will be honest with them and help them understand their options.
Oh, wow, that's beautiful. So this is Erin's business card. Uh, when you meet with her, she'll give you a copy of it. You can even, they could reach out and connect with you now and get a copy if they're watching this right now, or you can go over to Amazon and pick up a copy. But if you're going to work with anyone who's going to help you with your money, you want to know their whole story. And Erin has written a beautiful story. Chapter one's all about her relationship with her mother in the context of how that serves her today, her relationship with her father. And I'm sure you'll be able to connect with her at those levels. And then how she got into the business, what her philosophy is, and what her superpowers are. So, Erin, thank you for being on Author Spotlight. And I'm so grateful that you're not only in my life, but in the lives of the people who can really use your guidance and your leadership. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for all of the wisdom and guidance you've imparted to me over my career.
Good. Thank you.